Hey everybody, Zane Banks here. Hope you're holding up alright during these very strange and unfortunate times. Today I wanted to do a video on string bending, intonation and vibrato, which if you're a blues and a rock player, it is used in other genres as well, but it's probably the most commonly used extended technique, I guess, and it's not an easy one to do. I think a lot of people under the misconception that, you just bend a string, it's not that hard, but it's tricky. And I think when it came to rock playing when I was a kid and I was learning how to do that kind of stuff, it was one of the hardest things to perfect. And still these days, if I'm in a guitar store, it's the first thing that is the difference between a beginner and someone who's quite experienced. Can they bend in tune? And then what can they do with the note? So I just want to go over a couple of tips that I find useful for my students if I'm trying to help them out with this, and also I found really useful when I was doing it. The first thing is you have to know the note that you are bending to. So I was just in the key of E minor before. I was playing like some E minor pentatonic, E minor blues licks, and every note that I bent, I knew where I was going. It's not guesswork. It's not that hard in a pentatonic scale. I mean, you've only got 5 notes to choose from, and then if you add the blues note, you turn it into a hexatonic scale, so it only had 6 notes. So what I would suggest doing is familiarize your ear with the sound of that scale, and then when you're on a note, sing the next note while your finger is already playing the previous note, and then bend up to that. You can just play it on the guitar as well. You could do a classic thing of like, here's an E, then I could go to the 7th fret of the G, and try and match it. So you could go up just on one string playing a blues scale, or you could do it in position. There are some degrees of the scale that you tend to bend more frequently than others. In the intro I did bend the tonic up to the minor third, but that doesn't happen that often that you get that. It's less commonly done. So that's the thing that I would encourage you to do, is just hold a note and then bend up, either as a unison bend or just hear that pitch in your ear. Then what you'll find you can do after a period of time is you'll find that you start to get a physical feel for the tension in the string. There's been more than one occasion when I have been playing in a gig and I can't hear myself. Like it's too loud, my amp's on the other side of the stage, or an inner ear monitor falls out and you can't stop the show. And so the thing that I've found that's been really useful is I can tell if a note is going to be in tune by the amount of pressure that is pushing against the finger doing the bend. So bending that up there, this note is a G, it should go up to an A. And from the feel that's against my finger, I can tell that should be an A. And that's just something that comes with experience. The more you do, you get a tactile feeling. And the same thing, I could do it down here. I know that obviously I've got to push harder. There's more pounds of pressure working against my finger on that A. But that's another good way of doing it. It's just developing a tactile feeling. I think one of the hardest things that you can do when you're playing rock guitar is adding vibrato to a bent note. And there's a couple of guiding principles that I try to follow, particularly if I'm teaching people how to do this. One of them is, if you're bending up to a note, most of the time let the note sit at the pitch that you have reached for a fraction of a second, just so the listeners can hear the pitch that it's supposed to be at. Then add vibrato. Doesn't have to happen all the time. There's a couple of really great Malmsteen solos where he just does really wide vibrato on a bend, but it's so masterfully done that you know what the pitch is, even though he's actually messing with it, because vibrato is a micro form of a bend. So he'll do things whereas if you're an A, I mean, I was going all over. I didn't actually really hit an A for any sustained period then, but your ear could hear what I was going for. That's kind of tricky, but I would suggest that if you do, what I'm suggesting, I'm going to bend from a G to an A now. When the initial interest in the note starts to fade, that's when you can add vibrato to capture people's attention. Doing that vibrato is the very tricky thing, because what will happen if you don't maintain the right amount of pressure to keep the note up there, it's going to sort of fall, and it's going to sound like a balloon that's running out of air. So you get this, which sounds pretty bad. What I think the best way I can describe it is, if you have the note bent, what I'm doing is I'm just relaxing the pressure ever so slightly and then pushing back up. I might go maybe a fraction higher than the note that I was on, but most of the time it's just a relaxing and then a gaining of the tension again. So you get this. And you've got to use your ear, because it's tricky. The thing that's confusing, as I said before, is you've got to hit this note, and then vibrato is an altering of the pitch that you're on, and you have to do it in such a way that it doesn't sound like you're out of tune, even though by definition you are going out of tune, because you are adding vibrato, you're wobbling on a pitch. So it's just something that a lot of time and experience listening to great players. There are people who have really unique vibratos. Brian May has great vibrato, Jeff Beck, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Clapton. I mean, the list goes on and on. What do these guys do? How do they do it? Watch them do it, and try it with different fingers. You know, if you do it with, like, Stevie Ray Vaughan very often does a lick like this. I'm going to do it in the key of A, where he's bending. So he's essentially just bending the 4th degree up to the 5th, hits the minor 7th, and then does really wide index finger. So much so that, as you saw then, if you don't have a really firm grip, you'll pull off the string like that. It's not easy to do, and I don't know how he would have done it with 13s on. But that's a good one to practice. I don't have to do a lot of vibrato bends with my index finger. In country music, you do index bends quite a bit, that kind of stuff, but not with that level of vibrato. So it's just something to just go through, pick a key, or pick a box. You know, you might find this is your... doing stage vibrato, so you go up chromatically. That's pretty tricky, but it's good. It's all about the ear. Like, listen carefully, and then once you can note that you are in tune, start to take like a record of what it feels like under your fingers. So should you be in a situation where you can't hear your amp, who knows, maybe you're on the other side of the drum kit and your amp's on the far side with a bass amp in between. Probably not going to hear yourself. Well, certainly not well enough to be 100% in tune. That's where your tactile feel of the guitar is going to really save you. So I hope this has been helpful. Please follow me on YouTube, Instagram, the Rev Dr. Z, or on Facebook at my artist page. And yeah, if you've got any questions about this stuff or any other lessons you'd like me to cover, just drop us a line. Take it easy.